Good afternoon. Mayor Davis here. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force. Special acknowledgement to the Mayor David Bailey for being here as well on behalf of the county. I don't see you have Councillor House. I don't see him. I guess he's not here today. Oh, there you are. Okay. Good to see you here, Councillor House, especially since we don't have two of our councillors. Councillor Weaver is unable to make it today. The rest of you, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for those at home, this is probably, I think, the fifth or sixth meeting of the Mayor's Housing Partnerships Task Force. This could well be the last meeting before we move it forward, our recommendations to the respective councils for approval. But before we move into the actual meeting, if we could have the roll call, please. Who's taking that, Lori or Melanie?
It will be, yes.
Okay.
Mayor Bailey.
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor McCreary. Councillor Howes.
Here.
Councillor Weaver. Dan Brooks.
Here.
Andy Joseph.
Present.
Brian Sibley.
Present.
Lauriane Gagne. Lori McIntyre.
Present.
Graham Kubit.
Yeah.
I see you, Graham.
Graham's
Yeah.
present.
Odette Gomes.
Present.
Yeah.
David Prang. Jennifer Canning. Natasha Dobler.
Here.
Yeah.
Teresa Percival for MP Coleman.
I'm here.
And Daniel Zeckfield for MPP Boma.
Here.
Don Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. So that's great. Thank you very much. So before we move into dealing with our business, I'd like to say a couple of opening comments. First of all, thank you very much for attending today. And if we lose our quorum, we will recess automatically for up to 15 minutes. But you know, I think today it's an important day for our task force. We've spent a lot of time, most of it during this COVID pandemic, developing, I think, a very solid plan for beginning to address the housing crisis, housing affordability crisis we have in our community. What I really like about the work we've done is the recommendations are very specific. You can have a task force that has like aspirational general goals. I think we're all committed at the beginning to do more than that and develop a very specific action plan that would see results sort of on the ground, so to speak. And I think we've done that. I'm hoping as we move forward, the councils will approve the plan and that we can move forward to implement. Many of the recommendations are already in the process of being implemented by staff because so many of them make such good sense. So with that, I just have to recite a few of the rules that are in place today because it is a virtual meeting. We ask that all members be muted during the course of the meeting, except when speaking to reduce feedback. All web cameras, please keep them turned on so you count for quorum. Staff are requested to join the video meeting as and when the need arises to answer any questions. If you want to speak, please use that participants box and the raised hand button. Staff will lower your hand once you've finished speaking. As I said previously, in the event we have a connection or service interruption, we'll recess for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If we can't achieve that, then we'll automatically be adjourned. And so voting in this meeting will be conducted through general consensus, which means generally I'll ask if anybody votes in the negative to a motion or resolution. And if nobody physically raises their hand, then it's just automatically approved. And, you know, finally, I want to thank all of you for your commitment to the task force and, you know, especially some of the subcommittees. I think they've done some really excellent work, which is reflected as well in what I think is a very professional report that we have before us this afternoon for consideration. And in that sense, I really want to thank housing staff of the Health and Human Services Department. I think they've done an outstanding job in pulling that all together and kind of collating all the work that the various groups have done. So, does anybody have a declaration of pecuniary interest they wish to make regarding any item that's on our agenda this afternoon? You physically raise your hand if you want to declare a conflict. Seeing no raised hands, we'll move. We don't have any delegations, but we'll move then into the items for consideration. The first one is a response to questions that were raised during our last meeting. And we have Mary Ellen McClellan, Director of Housing and Homelessness. To do that, she has a verbal report that she likes to will give us. And then if you want to ask Mary Ellen any questions, please hit that raised hand button.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. So I just have a couple of just brief updates from our last meeting. Last meeting, we were asked by Councillor House that we include some of the county properties that were missed on the mapping process, and we have done so. So that item has been completed. It has been included within the action plan. We have also included the JC homes as part of the inventory. However, we were not able to provide the actual locations on the mapping as those homes and those of Brent Native Housing are scattered homes, and we couldn't actually do that, but were included in the inventory. Brian Hutchings did ask for the financial information to be included within the action plan, and we have updated and included that. And that is the work of the financial project team. And the last update was a request by Councillor House on the more details around the Trillium Way build. We can say that the Trillium Way build, we have received a feasibility study, so we are aware of what those costs would be on the Trillium Way lands in Paris. We have begun those discussions. We have had meetings with the county planning staff, and those meetings have gone very well, and certainly no issues that we can't overcome very quickly. We will be, our next steps around that is we will be meeting with the financial folks to come up with some financial options for that particular building. And we intend to come forward to committee and council in January with our options, financial options. We have a couple of ways to go, and we will be coming forward with report in January. If all goes well, and we certainly anticipate that everything is going smoothly, we can expect to be in the ground, hopefully by the end of March of 21. And that's it.
Great, good news. Yeah, and thank you, Mary Ellen. I mean, you and your staff have done some excellent work following up, and also your determination to move forward with concrete additions to our housing stock is admirable and to be commended. So any questions anybody has for Mary Ellen on her updates? Seeing none. So we'll move to item 4.2, which is the final task force report. And I believe, Mary Ellen, you're here to present on that. We've been given a copy of that. And can you give us a bit of an overview? I'm sure you've got a PowerPoint slide presentation. But before we get into it, is there a resolution that you're looking for, or would it be to receive it and recommend it for approval by the respective councils? Is that the kind of motion?
Yes.
Okay. Subject to any amendments anybody may want to make. So why don't can somebody put that on the, actually no, we'll have your presentation first and then we'll take that. So
Okay.
Floor is yours, Mary Ellen.
Thank you. So the first page, as you can see, well, first we want to start by saying thank you very much for the comments that we received from the rough draft we provided at the last meeting. We received some really valuable information, and based on those comments, we did in fact revamp the design. And we want to take the opportunity to thank our communications team, Maria and her team, for all of the assistance they gave us in preparing this, the Affordable Housing Action Plan. It's now what we say is it's a much easier read with lots of infographics. The orange color was certainly recommended by our communications team. It's a nice fresh color that promotes activity and action and partnership. So that's our front page cover. Okay. We then move on to, this page is certainly optional, but we kept it in because it certainly, it identifies the Grand River as our heritage river that connects our communities together. So we did leave that in, but that's certainly open for discussion. This is our table of contents, and it just basically, we've divided it in two ways. One with the context information which we'll go through very briefly, and the balance is a list of the tables and figures. So we just thought it would be an easier way to identify information. Okay. And of course, this is the mayor's opening remarks and messages. And both are promoting side by side, are promoting the development of more affordable housing. Our next page is the introduction page. And the introduction talks about the Brantford and the Brant County's rich history, the population statistics, and the household growth projections, and outlines the high waiting list, and as well as the low vacancy rate in our communities. The backgrounds and objectives basically highlights the objectives of the team, which was discovering the opportunities, working together, and making development easier. And it outlines the task force teams here as well. So we've tried to include lots of infographics to, again, make it very easy to read. This is a list of the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force members, and they're listed here. And this is an important piece here. This is our housing continuum on the housing continuum and analysis page. And it of course starts at the homelessness and ends at the home ownership piece with a variety of housing options in between. Now, what we want to point out about our housing continuum, it's not only all of the options, housing options, emergency shelters, or transitional supportive housing, community rent geared to income, affordable housing, as well as lower end of market rental housing, are not just simply just housing options, but they depend primarily on the client's needs as well as income. It's not just income, but needs as well. For example, you'll note the transitional housing support in here. That could be for potentially households who are leaving domestic violence situations. And you'll note the supportive housing piece for households and clients who are not able to live independently with or without those support services. So this highlights our entire housing continuum and highlights the need within each and every one of the pieces of the housing continuum. This is simply noting more on the housing continuum. We can move to the next page. So this is where we get into the cost projections, this is the actual action plan cost projections. And we've noted in here the amount that is required from the housing master plan. And we note here that approximately $103 million are required to build those almost 500 units over the next 10 years. Next page. These charts show, the table 3 shows the City Council approved affordable housing funding initiatives already underway and approved. Over the next 10 years, that comes to $31 million. And sorry, back up there 1 second. Thank you, sorry. And the table 4 shows additional potential affordable funding sources. And this is required in order to get the non-debt capital from the city and county to be able to build those units over the next 10 years. So we have identified our funding options on these pages, or in these tables, sorry. And our next steps. Our next steps here bring us to our action plan, which is on our next page. So this is the actual Appendix A, and this is the action plan. And this is probably the most important part of the document. This is the actual meat and potatoes or pasta or the most important part of your meal per se, in that this will ensure that this particular document does not stay on a shelf. It is reviewed every year, and the actions are updated or modified and delivered as required. As you'll be able to see, it outlines the action plan item, the action details, the timeline, and we have noted if they're underway or ongoing, or when they might happen throughout the action plan, and the team members that may be or lead contacts in the future, because we don't want these partnerships to go away. We want them to go on and live through this action plan. We will each area of the action plan identifies the great work of the project teams. So we've noted all of the work of the project teams within the action plan, and we will be reporting to staff. Housing staff will take the lead on updating this particular action plan year over year, and along with the master housing plan, we'll report to council on an annual basis, so we can ensure that this becomes a living, breathing document. Okay. This will go through the various, I won't go through each one, but this identifies each and every piece of the action plan activities. And finally, our mapping process. That was quite a complex process. They're very hard to read in this particular action plan, but you can be assured that every aspect of affordable housing is included here. Every possible piece of available land that we can potentially review for future affordable housing is included in the mapping processes. And the County of Brant is included as well on a separate mapping. And that is the action plan. Any questions on that?
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Marianne. Thanks very much. This document is really well prepared, and I'm eager to have this come to our council, and I believe there's going to be a plan in place to have it presented to our council. So that's all good. I have one question and one suggestion, if I may. The question is related to the financial side of it. County portion was listed as $15 million, and I think in our October discussions we were closer to $10 million, and that represents a significant jump. I think I understand it, but I wanted, in case I'm asked, I was wondering if somebody could just explain that to me. And then the second thing is, and I will sound like a broken record on the Trillium subject, but as you said about the action plan portion of the document, and as you said, it's the meat and potatoes. I think it will help the marketability of this document if Trillium shows up named in the action plan, the same way that Shellard Lane and the John Noble home are named in the action plan. So that's just a suggestion from my side of things. But and then if you would mind responding to my question, thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the Trillium, absolutely, that may have been an oversight on our part, but we can certainly include it. I think we did identify as a Paris site that we can certainly expand that to say Trillium Way. That should not be an issue at all. So we can do that very quickly.
Yeah. So Mary Ellen, where would you do that? Which page?
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
On page 7, it's clearly identified that there's 49 units identified for Paris, which one would assume are Trillium. And I don't think you necessarily need to name it there, but as you scroll down to, say, action items on page 12, 13, 14, in that range where we get into the meat and potatoes, using Mary Ellen's words, the Shellard Lane is named, John Noble Home is named. I think it would be helpful if the name Trillium just shows up there. Thank you.
Okay. In terms of you had a question, Councillor House, in respect to the dollar amounts. Can you give us that answer, Mary Ellen, or is Mr. Hutchings to do that?
I can give you part, or the financial team. I think Brian is here as well. But we did identify those as potential costs. Again, we will be coming forward to committee and councils very shortly, and Kevin will speak to that shortly. But I guess what we looked at was a very successful model, a very successful build that we had done in partnership, and that would be the John Noble Home Properties. So we looked at that, and we looked at the funding model, and we looked at the benefits of that particular building and how smoothly it went, and we did use those costs. But I think that from the financial team, Brian is here, and I can certainly think he can provide more depth. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mary Ellen. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to the member House. When the provincial download occurred of social housing or housing in 2002, 2003, there's an agreement entered between the county of Brant and the city of Brantford, which is silent on capital. It just speaks to operating. Since that time, there's been a mix of buildings, mainly in the city, which have been 100% paid for by the city. The city builds, but there's one in particular, the John Noble Home, as Mary Ellen just mentioned, which was funded based on population based. We've looked at that population base, which is 27.5% population in the county, and factor that into the calculation. There's worst case for the county if you did weighted assessment, which most regions use. Most regions like Region of Peel, Region of Niagara, and Region of Waterloo, the weighted assessment to the lower tier municipalities, that's 33%. So we thought we'd do on a past practice, a precedent that was set at Noble Home, and use the 27.5% to help pay for the assistance of all the capital projects moving forward, because there is no agreement right now between the county and the city on capital projects, just on operating.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any electronic raised hands, but what the heck? If you want to ask a question, just raise your hand physically. Don't see any. But once again, Mary Ellen, very, very impressive, very professionally done. And thanks to the committee members that did give you input after our last meeting. It was very useful, and it's a much improved document with that input. So let's move then to item 4.3, which is the next steps. And so we have Kevin O'Hara, the manager of the Housing Stability Program, who we've seen many times before. Kevin.
Thank you, Mr.
Floor is
Mayor.
yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Hello to you and Mayor Bailey, councillors, and all members of the task force. Great to see you again. So we have, as part of the agenda, the report to you on next steps, which is where we are. We're moving on to next steps, and it's from Mary Ellen and myself. And I won't go into too much detail. I'll state it for the purposes of the record here, and the members that are here today in terms of the next steps. These are what we're suggesting as in support of your task force to move forward with the Mayor's Housing Partnerships Task Force Action Plan. And that is specifically that the action plan be appended to a covering report that will be sent and received by Social Services Committee. And by way of that committee, of course, it does make its way and find its way to both councils. That the programs and initiatives outlined in the Affordable Housing Action Plan be adopted and implemented by both councils. We'd be asking that both councils endorse the Affordable Housing Action Plan. Talk about the financial modeling that I believe Mary Ellen and Brian have already talked about and spoken to in terms of that issue, and how the action plan can be funded in terms of, again, that non-debt capital that's required to build those units. That the County of Brant portion be requested to fund their portion of the deliverables in the action plan, and again, as outlined in the action plan itself, based on the cost sharing that Brian shared with you. And that, as I think Councillor House mentioned, and we certainly do recommend that City of Brantford staff offer to present the Mayor's Housing Partnerships Task Force Affordable Housing Action Plan to the County of Brant Council. Now, of course, staff with Health and Human Services have presented to County Council before, so we'd be happy to do that again and go over the plan and go over how the work of the task force has accomplished so much and can accomplish so much moving forward in the coming year. And then finally, as mentioned before, this is a living plan. We want to make sure that this moves on. And as you said, Mayor Davis, this has action items and we'll have to keep traction going. And so we're recommending that in conjunction with the housing master plan that was approved by Brantford City Council last year, that we provide an annual update on this action plan in conjunction with that action plan at least once a year. And the next time for that would be December 2021. And so again, those are the next steps that we're recommending and per the report that is before the members today. And on behalf of all the staff, I just want to thank all of the task force members for all of your work and all of your support of the project teams. And it's just been great working with you all. So thank you very much. And that's it for me, Mr. Mayor, unless there's a question.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a quick question for you. So this is essentially if approved and the councils approve it, then this is the final meeting of the task force. But you mentioned to avoid it collecting dust on some shelf, there needs to be metrics and action plan, which we have. And so who will you be reporting to, say, a year from now? And what does that look like?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. I'll to all the task force members through you. I would suggest, and I invite Mary Ellen or anyone else to jump in here, but what we're suggesting is that we report to Social Services Committee, which then does get rolled up to both councils, and the action items and the progress on those action items are captured through that reporting mechanism.
Right.
And Mary Ellen, I'm not sure if you had more to add. Or Brian.
Thank you, Kevin. Through the mayor, the only thing I could add to that, thank you, Kevin, is that we do have a Brantford Housing Stability Plan that we are legislatively required to update for the province. So the master plan will, of course, lead into that stability plan, and this action plan will support the work of the master plan. So all three plans will fit together. We will be coming forward, as Kevin said, in December of 21 with an update on the housing master plan and this action plan. But legislatively, we're required to report to the province in June. So we will be rolling that information up and providing it to the province for the stability plan in June, and that's it.
Yeah, can I suggest this, that for those of you who are not elected officials, the city and the county have what's called Social Services Committee. We have membership on that from both councils, and it is because we operate social services, health and human services jointly. So could we expect a report, say at 6 months, to the Social Service Committee, and perhaps a copy of that report can be given to the task force members just so they get periodic updates?
To the mayor, absolutely, we will have it in 6 months. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Hutchings, you wanted to comment on that.
In addition, I'm not going to change anything Mary Ellen just said, or Kevin, is in addition to that, Mr. Mayor, if you're aware of the rest of the task force wouldn't be, we have a performance management system here at the city of Brantford. So each general manager sets goals for the year, which start off with council's priorities and then lead to some service review opportunities, but also any other plans they have officially approved by council. So the GM of community service or health and human service will have this as their goals. And so they'll set them out. It'll be part of their goals for the year. And it'll also be part of their reporting as well as for next year. So it'll work in quite timely and quite nicely at this point in time of year if this gets approved.
Any other member have any questions of either Kevin O'Hara? Not seeing any. So I think we need to make a decision. Now we've received all of the reports. So, and it's formally adopting, the task force formally adopting the task force report and action plan and asking it, recommending it go up to councils for approval. So I believe clerk staff are helping me today have a draft resolution that you'd like to put on the screen for us to consider and comment on. Just wait a second here. I'm just trying to share it. Can you put it up? Okay. Sure. Here we go. And should we add to that and that we recommend it for approval by the respective councils? Okay, so it goes part of the report. So can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Just physically raise your hand. So Graham is moving it and Dan Brooks is seconding it. So any discussion, any comments before I call the vote on it? Doesn't anybody want to say anything? Yes, Graham.
Ready to get started.
Go ahead.
No, I'll echo your thanks.
Yeah, we're having trouble hearing you, Graham.
I echo the thanks to everybody who put the report together. Look forward to working on achieving it. Very clear, all of us, the need for affordable housing is there. Information here, there's enough to really guide a lot of actions. So been into that in
Anyone else wish to make any comment before I call the vote? Okay. All right. So is anyone opposed to us adopting and voting for approval of the council's this report? And if you are, you'd physically raise your hand. Not seeing any raised hands, I think we make a declaration that the support is unanimous. Before we leave, we also have to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Howes is moving it. Odette is seconding it. Any discussion? Seeing no raised hands. Anyone opposed to us adopting those minutes? Raise your hand. No hands raised so that we can assume that is done. So no resolutions, no notices of motion. Before we end, Mayor Bailey, did you want to make any comments before we end the task force?
Well, I would just like to thank everyone too for all the effort they put into this. It's been a lot of work. Things have changed a lot with the pandemic, and things are very fluid in both the county and the city regarding a lot of things right now. So I think you did a very good job of making a solid report in a very fluid time. And we'll take it back to council. As you know, councils are very unusual groups of people. They'll decide what they want to do on their own, and they can't be directed by any committee to make a decision that you might think could be directed. So we will take it forward. You'll come and present to us, and councils will do what councils will do. And I'm sure you'll be the first to hear about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. So we have no, usually we decide on when our next date is going to be, our next meeting date, but no next meeting date. I think it's remarkable that the task force has finished its job in less than a year during the pandemic. And it's, and the project teams did a lot of work, very commendable. And of course, our staff here. So with that, I want to wish everyone the best for the holiday season, and sincerely wish you that you a happy and prosperous new year. And we'll see how the report is adopted or received by the respective councils, hopefully approved. But Mayor Bailey is quite right. You can never be 100% certain what might happen. But with that said, again, I want to thank all the task force members. This has been a lot of heavy lifting done by a lot of members of this task force. And I thank you on behalf of the city and more importantly, on behalf of the many residents who are, have housing issues that I think we can derive some satisfaction to go into this holiday season, that we've made a beginning contribution towards really addressing in a meaningful way the housing affordability issue that we have in our region. So with that, wish everybody the best.
Happy holidays, everyone.